Before we begin, take a moment to get comfortable. Let your arms go heavy, your breath slow. And as you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing what time it is, where you are, and what city or village you're listening from. It's love to know. And if you'd like more quiet stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe so they gently appear when you need them most. Now, let's begin. You don't remember it, but once your world had no names, no nouns, no edges drawn by words, just softness. Sound was not speech, a vibration, a low hum in the womb, a heartbeat, not yours, but close, constant. This was how it began, not with meaning, but with motion, not with knowing, but with sensing. Your brain opened to the world the way a flower opens to light, slowly, without instruction, and every petal was a neuron waiting for a signal. Before birth, your brain was already writing itself, folding, branching, sending test pulses down empty wires. Millions of connections forming every second, a network with no content yet, full of promise. You weren't thinking, you were forming the capacity to think. There was no language, but there was rhythm, your mother's breathing, the rise and fall of her voice through fluid, the pressure of a hand across her belly. All of it became input. Your neurons were listening. After birth, the floodgates opened. Light, sharp, sudden. Sound, too loud, too close. Smell, new, thick, unfamiliar. Touch, air on skin, the sensation of hunger. Then the comfort of milk. Each moment added to your circuitry. Not by choice, but by presence. You were not learning about the world. You were becoming the world through sensation. The early brain doesn't wait for understanding. It builds first. Meaning comes later. At this stage, neurons connect like explorers, meeting at random, reaching out across tiny gaps, testing pathways. Some signals find echoes, others fade. But every sight, sound, smell, they shape you. A single caress can trigger a cascade of firings that alters how you trust. A song hummed softly can pattern your mind for melody and memory before you even know what a song is. Your brain, then, was like a wet clay map. Every touch left a mark. Every repetition, a groove. By the time you were a few months old, your neurons had outnumbered the stars in the galaxy. More connections than you could ever keep. And so, your brain began to choose. It watched, listened, not with awareness, but with attention. What patterns appeared often? What sounds brought food? What lights meant comfort? Those were kept, strengthened. Others, the noise with no meaning, flickers that brought nothing, were gently let go. This is neuroplasticity in its first bloom, the brain's sacred ability to change, to reshape itself with experience. And in childhood, it is not a slow process. It is a wildfire, dance of pruning and growth. You weren't thinking, I'm learning, but you were. Every blink, every stretch of your tiny hands, every shifting gaze was a lesson, and every lesson was written into your nervous system like script on ancient paper, deep, fast, and with feeling. At this stage, even silence teaches the pause between footsteps, the stillness before sleep. The quiet after a cry has been comforted. These become reference points for rhythm, for safety, for time. Time itself, to a child's brain, is not a ticking clock. It is the feeling of expectation, the breath between events. Even now, you can feel it when you wait for someone to speak, or when a song pauses just long enough to make the next note meaningful. You learned that before words. Before words, you had language, the turn of a head, the widening of an eye, heartbeat against your cheek. Your brain memorized these, labeled them not with syllables, but with feeling, trust, fear, curiosity, relief. These became the foundations upon which later thoughts would be built. Your first sentences were gestures. Your first paragraphs, cries, coos, and sighs, communication, was already happening. Your brain was already fluent in emotion, rhythm, light, and beneath all this was structure. The architecture of the early brain is like scaffolding in a great cathedral. Temporary beams hold space for future halls. Some are removed, some are built upon. You are born with the outlines of everything you might become. But which ones fill in? That depends on love, on sound, on repetition, on chance. Neuroplasticity does not promise anything, it only promises possibility. This is why no two childhoods are the same. Even twins, born moments apart, will build different minds. Because while genetics lay the blueprint, experience carves the details, and every detail matters. The softness of a blanket, the tempo of a lullaby, the expression on a face when a baby babbles back. Don't all these invisible things sculpt the brain with quiet tools before you could walk? You had already shaped the way you would think, not fixed, not faded, but tilted, leaning towards certain rhythms, certain curiosities. By the time your first word escaped your lips, your brain had already mapped thousands of rules about sound, light, timing, and touch. Language was a layer laid gently on top, but it was not the beginning. So when you speak now, know this: each word rides on rivers dug long ago in silence. Each thought you form is built on rhythms learned before. You knew what thinking was. Your intelligence was not born in grammar. It was born in gaze. And as you drift now, half asleep, half remembering, your body holds the memory of that wordless mind. The one that listened before it understood, that watched before it named, that felt the world before it needed to explain it. And perhaps it still listens, still watching, still open, quietly waiting for the next wonder to arrive. You did not begin life by asking questions. You began by being a question, a breathing, blinking mystery placed softly into a world that unfolds one sensation at a time. Before you chase knowledge, you absorb it. With your eyes, with your hands, with every tremble in your breath when something new arrives. This is how the child's brain builds itself, not from textbooks, but from awe, not from pressure, but from play. To understand childhood learning, you must forget what learning looks like in adulthood. There is no sitting still, no planning, no self-consciousness. Instead, there is movement, curiosity, repetition. A baby drops a spoon from a high chair over and over. You might think it's simple mischief, but the brain is testing gravity, is studying cause and effect with the seriousness of a quiet scientist. Each thud of the spoon on the floor is a note in a neural song. Drop, sound, reaction. Drop, silence. Drop, laughter. The pattern changes. The connections grow stronger. This is wiring by wonder. In these early years, you are not taught so much as tuned to the patterns of the world around you. The face that smiles when you babble, the hand that reaches out when you cry, the warmth of a blanket, the rustle of leaves, the click of footsteps approaching. Each repeated interaction etches a line into the neural map. The more predictable the pattern, the more stable the connection, and the more delightful the discovery, the faster the brain responds. Wonder is not a luxury. It is the architect of cognition. Consider the child who hears birdsong for the first time. She pauses, eyes widen. The brain lights up, not just in hearing centers, but in areas linked to memory, emotion, and motor planning. She may turn her head toward the sound, imitate it, smile in recognition when she hears it again. This is learning. Without instruction, without effort. The bird never knew it was teaching. But the child's brain had already begun to change. Every sense is involved. Touch teaches texture, temperature, resistance. Taste teaches safety, preference, nourishment. Sight teaches contrast, motion, color. Even smell, ancient and primal, teaches comfort, warning, recognition. A child touches everything, not out of rebellion, but out of necessity. Fingers become guides. They shape the invisible into something knowable. And when movement is added to sensation, a crawl, a stretch, a reach, the brain ties space and experience together. You don't just see the world, you become part of it. The child's brain is plastic, not in the artificial sense, but in the poetic one, malleable, responsive, willing to be changed. But this plasticity is not aimless. It flows along pathways of interest, where attention goes, connections grow. This is why delight accelerates learning. When something fascinates a child, a flickering candle, a spinning wheel, a bouncing ball, the brain floods with dopamine, a gentle chemical of curiosity and reward. Dopamine is not just pleasure. It is a marker of this matters. It tells the brain, save this pattern, strengthen this circuit. And so, a simple toy becomes a lesson in motion, light, and control. A laugh becomes a social map. Game becomes a rehearsal for future skill. You do not remember these first lessons, but they shape you still. The neural bridges built in infancy become the highways of childhood. The roads most traveled become the ones easiest to return to. It is not intelligence that leads a child to explore. It is wonder, and it is not repetition alone that strengthens learning, but joyful repetition. A child does not repeat for the sake of memory. They repeat because it feels right, because the rhythm echoes something inside them, because the pattern of cause and effect brings peace or excitement or connection. And this is the secret of the fastest learning years of your life. It didn't feel like learning because it wasn't work. It was play. To adults, play may seem like a break. To the developing brain, it is everything. Play allows failure without consequence. It invites experimentation. It welcomes surprise. Through pretend games, a child rehearses emotions, rules, social roles, physics, story structure, all in a single afternoon in the realm of play. The brain learns how to adapt, and adaptation is the soul of intelligence. Watch a toddler build with blocks. They stack, then knock them down, again and again. Is it destruction? No, it's feedback. Each crash tells them something about balance, quality, structure. No lecture could do the same. When a block tower stands tall, just once, the child glows, not from understanding in the adult sense, but from connection. Their brain has discovered a new piece of the puzzle. Wiring by wonder is not limited to the young, but in childhood, it is amplified. The brain is still writing its own instruction manual. Every experience becomes a potential chapter, and when the world responds with warmth, safety, rhythm, learning blooms. The child learns not only what the world is, but how to be within it. And those lessons echo quietly through every future thought. Even now, the adult mind carries traces of this early blueprint. You still feel joy at a familiar melody. You still lean in when someone tells a story. You still pause when something glows, spins, or surprises. Wonder did not leave you, only grew quiet. But your neurons still know the dance, and when you let yourself be curious, when you follow fascination, instead of expectation, you return to that original state of joyful wiring. You become, once again, a child of the mind. So close your eyes. Think of the first time you touched something cold, heard a new sound, heard light reflect on water. Your brain was listening, recording, changing, not to prepare for a test, but to feel connected. And in that feeling came growth. In that softness came structure. In that spark came a path. And tomorrow, as you sleep, as your mind reshapes itself again, you may find that the next chapter is already beginning to unfold, where imitation becomes conversation, where the brain learns by mirroring the world around it, where being seen becomes the next form of knowing. You sit across from someone and they smile, a slow, sincere curve of the mouth. Without thinking, you smile back, not because you decided to, but because something deeper, quieter, mirrored them. It's a reflex, yes, but also something more intimate, okay? A trace of neural empathy etched long before you knew what smiling meant. This is the beginning of the dance, not just between people, but between brains. A dance led by neurons that do not act alone, but reflect. Mirror neurons, the soft glass inside your mind, discovered in the quiet experiments of the 1990s. These neurons changed how we understand connection. Scientists in Parma, Italy, watched monkeys reach for food, and their brain scans lit up as expected. Then, something surprising happened. When the monkeys watched humans reach for the same food, those same neurons lit up again. No motion, number, movement, only observation. Yet the brain responded as if it were doing the action itself. Something had been revealed, a window between self and other. You too are born with this quiet window. As a baby, you mimic faces, not by choice, but because your nervous system was built to echo. A raised eyebrow, stuck out tongue, startled blink, each one mirrored in your tiny face, not because you understood, but because you were tuning that imitation for a child isn't copying, it's belonging. The brain says, I see you, I become you, so that one day I can become myself. This, perhaps, is one of the most beautiful features of the developing mind. Before there are lessons, there is mimicry. Before there are rules, there is rhythm. You do not teach a child to clap. They watch, they feel the beat, and then, suddenly, their hands come together with delight. The neurons do not wait for language. They mirror movement, emotion, energy. This mirroring goes beyond the physical. Scientists believe that mirror neurons don't just reflect what we see. They reflect why we see it. Not just the hand reaching for a cup, but the intention behind. The gesture, to grasp, to offer, to take, to comfort. In this subtle difference, the mind begins to learn theory of mind, the ability to guess what someone else is thinking or feeling, a foundational skill for empathy, storytelling, and social connection. Imagine watching a parent cry. The child's face may shift into an expression of confusion, then sadness, not because they feel what the parent feels, but because their brain echoes what it sees. Through this echo, emotion enters the self. A child who watches joy learns joy. A child who sees comfort learns to soothe. This is the neural ballet of human connection. Each motion, each sigh, step in the dance of imitation. There's a reason we yawn when others yawn, why we tense when a character in a film takes a painful fall, why we flinch at imaginary danger. These are not weaknesses of attention, but evidence of your mirror system at work. You live not just in your own skin, but briefly, softly, in the skin of others. This, too, is learning, not through lists, but through lived glimpses. You borrow another's perspective, just long enough to expand your own. Children don't just mimic people. They mimic roles, voices, attitudes, even entire patterns of behavior. They play house, pretend to be teachers, doctors, adventurers, not because they are trying to impress, but because the mind is trying on possibilities. Like clothes, every role play is a rehearsal, an internal audition for identity. Mirror neurons let the child say, today, I am someone else. Tomorrow, I will be me again, but with something new I've brought home. In early childhood, its form of learning is gentle and unstructured, but its effects are profound. It's how accents are acquired, how gestures are passed down, how cultural rituals echo across generations. When a child watches a grandparent light a candle, kneel in prayer, or fold a dishcloth in a certain way, they don't simply see it, they feel it, they mirror it, they embody it, And in doing so, they inherit something without ever being told. Your own childhood is filled with such inheritances. You may hum a tune you never remember learning, tilt your head when thinking, just like your father did, a phrase in a voice that sounds startlingly familiar. These, too, are echoes of imitation, tiny neural traces carved by mirrors long faded from the room, but the pattern remains, like footprints in a brain soft enough to remember them. This power of mirroring does not vanish with age. It deepens. You still learn by watching, still adjust your voice to match the person beside you, still feel a surge of emotion when someone shares theirs. But the adult brain has more filters, more layers, more hesitation. Still, deep beneath those layers, the mirror is intact. It flickers when someone speaks your truth, when a friend winces and you feel it, okay, when a stranger smiles and you don't know why, but smile back anyway. Even in adulthood, your neurons listen for pattern, not just in behavior, but in emotion. You are shaped by those around you. Their joy calms you. Their fear alerts you. Their stillness slows you down. Your mind, like a lake, responds to every ripple. And in relationships, we don't just communicate. We co-regulate. We become part of one another's nervous systems, mirroring posture, tone, timing, synchronizing, heartbeats, matching breath. It's invisible, and it's everywhere. When people say they clicked with someone, this is partly what they mean. Their mirror systems aligned, their brains danced in silent parallel. Two minds temporarily moving as one. This is what makes deep learning possible, and what makes deep connection feel so safe. Because in that mirrored moment, you are no longer just observing, you are being so. Tonight, as you rest, think back to someone you once watched with quiet reverence. Maybe a sibling, a parent, teacher, a friend. Someone whose smile taught you how to smile, whose strength gave your body posture, whose laughter rewired something small inside you. They live within you still, not just in memory, but in neurons, in gestures, in small habits you never thought to question. This is the quiet legacy of mirror neurons, a dance begun in childhood, still moving beneath your every thought. And as this dance slows, another pattern begins to emerge, not of imitation, but of timing. Moments where the brain opens wide to receive, like windows in spring. Moments that vanish if missed, but bloom when caught. When caught, your brain is not a machine that grows on a fixed schedule. It is a garden, sensitive to light, to touch, to rhythm. There are moments when it becomes incredibly fertile, ready to bloom at the slightest signal. Scientists call them sensitive periods, windows of time when your brain's plasticity, its ability to change and rewire, is at its softest and most welcoming. Like a freshly tilled field waiting for seeds, these windows do not last forever. They open wide during early development, then close gradually, sometimes quietly. Like a door you didn't hear swing shut. And yet, what enters during those open hours can shape you for life. Think of language, okay? The sounds that spill from your mother's mouth before you know what words are. Q. A baby. Language is not information. It is music, a melody carried by tone, breath, and heartbeat. By 6 months old, you can already tell the difference between the sounds of your native language and a foreign one. Not because you understand, but because your brain is tuning itself like an instrument. By 12 months, you begin to lose the ability to hear distinctions in languages you don't hear often. Your brain trims what it doesn't need, just like it prunes unused neurons. If language doesn't flood in during that time, if the child doesn't hear words or hear enough variation, then even later, when the words arrive, they may land in a mind that has missed its most absorbent moment. The door is not locked, but it is harder to push open. And yet, this isn't about pressure. It's not about teaching faster or pushing earlier. Sensitive periods are not performance schedules. They are invitations. Invitations for the brain to grow in response to its environment. The sensitive period for vision, for instance, opens right after birth. But it's not enough for the eyes to simply work. They must see light, shape, movement to fully wire the brain's visual centers. There are cases where children were born with cataracts in both eyes, and the cataracts were removed late, after the critical window had closed. Their eyes were healthy, but they struggled to see clearly, because the brain had never learned to make sense of the light. This tells us something important. Experience doesn't just enter the brain, it builds the brain. Another sensitive period, perhaps the most mysterious one, belongs to emotion. In the earliest years of life, the brain wires itself around connection, the warmth of a caregiver's arms, the rhythm of their heartbeat, the soft cooing in response to distress. All of this teaches the nervous system what safety feels like. If these experiences arrive when the brain is open to them, then the circuits for trust.com and emotional regulation form strong, resilient paths. If they are absent or unpredictable or unsafe, then the child may grow with jagged emotional rhythms, startled easily, unable to soothe, always braced. Again, the door does not lock forever, but it becomes harder to find. These periods of sensitivity vary from system to system, for movement, for balance, for sound, for smell, even for social learning. Each has its own schedule, its own season of readiness. But what they share is this incredible quiet efficiency. During these times, the brain doesn't have to try to learn, it absorbs. A child doesn't practice walking the way an adult practices piano. They wobble, they fall, they try again, and the brain adapts with every step. A toddler doesn't memorize grammar rules. They simply listen and soon speak in perfect, complex sentences. For adults, this can seem like magic, but it is not magic. It is timing, and here is where it becomes poetic, because these sensitive periods are not rigid, not identical in every child. They are guided by biologies, but also by interaction, affection, and rhythm. Touch can accelerate them. Neglect can delay them. Trauma can freeze them. Love can reawaken them. They respond to life, not to curriculum, not to pressure, but to presence. Some sensitive periods are brief. Others span years. Take music. If a child learns an instrument before the age of 7, they are more likely to develop perfect pitch, the rare ability to identify any musical note without a reference, tone.y, because the brain's auditory system is still sculpting itself in those years. And music, especially played and heard, lays down complex patterns that last a lifetime. This doesn't mean you can't learn later, only that the early window offers a special kind of ease, softness in the brain's clay that welcomes the imprint. Sensitive periods are not just about ability, they're about efficiency. The same effort that teaches a 5-year-old to speak 3 languages might only teach an adult 1, and with far more practice, the same hours of play that teach a young child empathy might require years of therapy to repair in a grown-up who missed that window. But here's the gentle truth. What is missed can still be felt. The door, though heavier, can still be nudged open with patience. And so the child's mind becomes a landscape with shifting gates. Some open early, some later. Some swing wide and stay open for years. But all of them respond to what the world offers. A song, smile, a voice calling their name, safe place to fall asleep. These are not just comforts, they are keys. And as you lie back now, perhaps with memories of your own childhood beginning to flutter up like moths around a porch light, you may wonder which windows opened for you, what entered, what was missed, what still lingers. There may be music in you you've forgotten how to hear, languages your neurons once knew but never practiced, motions your body longed to learn but never found the room for. That's the strange beauty of neuroplasticity. it carries shadows of the paths not taken. And sometimes those paths call again. And so, the question becomes, if certain doors are easier to walk through in childhood, what happens if we miss the timing? Is there a way the mind makes space for both pruning and rediscovery that leads us gently into the next unfolding idea, the laboratory of childhood itself, a space where learning doesn't look like instruction, but like imagination, where every game, every stumble, every fantasy becomes a rehearsal for life, for life. It begins simply. A hand reaches for a block, mouth makes a sound and names it. A blanket becomes a cave, a stick becomes a sword. And in that moment, quietly, invisibly, your brain begins to build itself through play, not by instruction, not by repetition, but by imagination. Play is not a pause between lessons. It is the lesson. It is the brain's gentlest teacher, wrapped in laughter, wonder, and motion. And it is ancient across every culture and every time children have played. Without manuals, without structure, without curriculum, they toss stones, they chase shadows, they talk to invisible friends. They assign meaning to feathers and bottle caps and pine cones, and in doing so, they sculpt neural circuits as surely as a sculptor molds clay. Play does what textbooks cannot. It trains the mind without force, invites repetition without boredom, and transforms the abstract into the real. Think of a child playing house. They assign roles: parent, baby, dog. They mimic conversations overheard. Okay. They cradle, they scold, they soothe. Okay. But beneath the surface of the game, the brain is rehearsing empathy, language, social structure, the scripts of caregiving and comfort. This isn't frivolous. This is rehearsal. This is neurocircuitry being shaped through soft drama. The child doesn't know they're learning. And that is the genius of it. Or consider a game of tag. On the outside, it's chaos, running feet, laughter, shrieks. Look closer. Here, the child is learning spatial navigation, motor coordination, risk assessment, and the rules of fairness. They are learning to chase and be chased, to anticipate, to respond, to self-regulate excitement. The heart races. The brain lights up. And all the while, memory and pattern grow stronger. Even solitary play teaches. A child stacking blocks isn't just building towers. They are discovering physics, balance, cause, and effect. What happens when something tips? And how to try. Again, they learn patience, problem solving, creative resilience. When the tower falls again and again, the brain doesn't label it failure. It calls it curiosity. Inside the brain, play triggers a symphony. Dopamine rises, not just from reward, but from the act of exploring the unknown. Serotonin gently stabilizes mood. Oxytocin hums in moments of shared play, especially in cooperative games. And then there's BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a protein that supports the growth, survival of new neurons and synapses. BDNF increases during play, especially physical, joyful, free play. It is the fertilizer for the mind's garden. Now, imagine a schoolroom where children are told to sit still, to memorize without motion, to answer before wondering. This is not how the brain was designed to learn. Not first, not best. Structured education may teach facts, but it cannot replace the developmental richness of play. Because play does more than educate. It integrates in play. Emotion meets thought. Movement meets memory. Imagination meets logic. When a child becomes a tiger, they embody power, stealth, and instinct. They aren't just pretending, they are trying on selves. When they become a superhero, they are rehearsing courage. And when they become a villain, they are exploring boundaries. This isn't danger. This is development. One of the most beautiful things about play is its ability to heal. Children who have experienced trauma often replay events in symbolic form. Not with words, but with dolls, or sand, or drawing, or movement. A truck crashing, a baby crying, a door that always slams. Through this, the brain retells its story again and again until the emotional charge lessens and understanding quietly replaces fear. Therapists call it play therapy. But long before the term existed, children knew how to do it on their own. Play is also where the brain tests boundaries safely. It is where children pretend to be mean and learn what happens when they are. It's where they create rules and negotiate when someone breaks them. It's where justice, fairness, and inclusion are not taught from a chalkboard, but felt in the body when someone is left out of the game or when a teammate breaks trust. Play trains the ethical brain. And then there is a rough and tumble play, the rolling, tumbling, wrestling kind, so often misunderstood, but deeply essential. This kind of play, especially in mammals, teaches self-restraint. It helps children read social cues, control aggression, and build bonds of trust. The line between fun and too far is felt, not told. And through it, the child learns where that line lives. Adults forget to play. We replace it with productivity, with obligation. But even for adults, play awakens neuroplasticity. It invites creativity. It refreshes tired circuits. Laughter lights up the brain in ways no lecture can. And joy, especially unstructured joy, makes learning possible again. Even now, you may remember the joy of a childhood game more vividly than a classroom lesson, because memory is not built by information. It's built by emotion, and play is the emotion of learning for all its importance. Play is vanishing from childhood. Unstructured time is replaced by screens, schedules, and supervision. Free exploration shrinks. Recess shortens. Even toys become more scripted, leaving less room for imagination. But the brain has not changed. It still craves the freedom to invent, to move, to make believe, because play is how it grows. And so, when you see a child turn a spoon into a spaceship, a puddle into a sea, a cardboard box into a kingdom, know that you are watching a mind in motion, not wasting time, not avoiding work, but deep in the business of becoming. Because inside every game, every silly voice, every imaginary friend, the brain is trying out possible futures, learning how to cope, how to dream, how to be. And when night falls and the child curls up in bed, still buzzing softly with the echoes of the day's adventures, the brain begins to sort it all. Which brings us, gently, to another kind of learning. A learning that does not need play, but is shaped by it. Learning that is quiet and often invisible. FORGETFULNESS.A. Pruning of the garden. The brain's elegant way of making room for what matters most. You begin with abundance. In early childhood, your brain overbuilds, crafts trillions of connections, synapses blooming like wildflowers. Every new sound, every flicker of light, every warm voice lays down a thread in the soft web of your mind. By the time you are just 2 or 3 years old, your brain holds far more synaptic connections than it ever will again. It's not efficient, it's not tidy, but it's full of possibility. This is your brain's opening act, not one of precision, but of generosity. It gives you more than you need, so it can later discover what truly matters. Then comes the pruning. Not harsh, not sudden, but slow and deliberate, like trimming a bonsai or clearing a forest path. Connections that are used often become stronger. They thicken like branches, wrapped in myelin to make them fast and smooth. Connections that are rarely used begin to fade. First quietly, then permanently. This isn't loss, it's refinement. You forget, not because something went wrong, but because your brain is doing something right. Pruning begins in early childhood, continues into your 20s, especially in the parts of the brain that guide decision-making, empathy, focus, and self-control. Imagine sculpting not from clay, but from a block of marble. The form is already inside, but it takes subtraction to find it. So, it's too with the brain. Its early overgrowth holds the shape of who you might become. But to become that person, some pathways must be let go. In the visual cortex, for example, pruning helps sharpen how you see. At birth, your brain is ready for any pattern, any face, any light. But as you grow, it tunes itself to your environment. What you see most often, faces, books, motion, light, those connections are reinforced. What you rarely see fades away. In this way, your brain slowly customizes your perception to the world it thinks you live in. A child raised among trees wires differently than one raised in a city of glass. A child who grows with books forms different networks than one who grows with song. Not better, not worse. It's just shaped by attention. The same is true for sound. Infants can hear and distinguish the full range of human phonemes, the tiny building blocks of all spoken language. But by 1 year of age, their brain has begun to prune away the sounds not present in their environment. The Japanese infant stops hearing the difference between L and R. Key English infant forgets the tones that shape meaning in Chinese. This isn't loss, it's linguistic specialization. Your brain isn't closing doors. It's choosing which to walk through. You may mourn the things you forget: the childhood friend's last name, smell of your grandmother's house, the tune of a song you once sang nightly. But these losses create space. They allow new memories to find room, new skills to grow without chaos. If your brain remembered everything, you would drown in detail. The act of forgetting is how you make meaning. There is even a term for this: synaptic pruning. And it is not passive. It's directed by glial cells, the brain's caretakers. It's a support team. Among them are microglia, tiny cells that act like gardeners and janitors. He patrol your neural forest, marking synapses that are no longer needed. Then, quietly, he cleared them away. Not because the memory was unimportant, but because your brain is moving on. It's a delicate balance. Too little pruning, and your brain becomes cluttered, like a house filled with every object you've ever touched. Too much pruning, and vital connections may disappear. The threads that hold together language, memory, self, in certain neurological conditions. This balance is disrupted. Some scientists believe that over-pruning in adolescence may play a role in schizophrenia. Others suggest that under-pruning may contribute to autism. We do not yet fully understand this process, but we know it matters, and we know it shapes us deeply. You prune what you do not practice. So a child who never plays music may lose the brain's capacity to hear harmony. A child who never learns a second language may find it harder later in life. But this is not final. The brain remains plastic, changeable into adulthood. It's more slowly, it's more effortfully. What you practice, you preserve. What you attend to, you reinforce. Even now, you are shaping your brain. There's poetry in knowing that forgetting is a form of remembering, because pruning doesn't destroy the past. It reshapes it, compresses, condenses, simplifies. What remains are the patterns, the habits, the core memories that define you. And sometimes, what feels like forgetting is the brain simply choosing not to surface a detail because it no longer fits. The story it tells about who you are. Think of a trail in the woods. At first, it's clear. You walk it often, but if left alone, it slowly disappears beneath leaves and time. The memory is not gone, but it is no longer your path. Pruning works this way. It lets old trails fade, so new ones can be formed with clarity, speed, and purpose. In moments of quiet, you may feel a kind of nostalgia for the selves you've forgotten. The way you once tied your shoes, the route you walked to school, the imaginary friend who slept at your side. Those memories may be gone, but the emotions they carried, the warmth, the fear, the joy, have shaped how you feel today. In this way, pruning doesn't just refine thought, it deepens emotion. You forget the facts, but you remember the feeling. And sometimes, forgotten connection can be rekindled. A song you haven't heard in decades opens a door. A scent brings back a summer. A voice echoes a long-lost rhythm. The trail, though overgrown, still exists in the forest of your mind. And with enough repetition, the brain can clear it again. This is why practice matters. It's why musicians rehearse daily, why athletes train endlessly, why language learners repeat. Because the brain needs reminding again and again that this path is worth keeping. Without use, it fades. With use, it flourishes. So the next time you forget a name, a date, a word, remember, this is not failure. It is your brain making choices. It is optimizing, trimming, evolving. It is letting go to make room for what you use now. The child's brain forgets as it grows. The adult brain forgets to stay agile. And in both, pruning is not an end, but a clearing. There's a softness to early feelings. They arrive before language, before logic, before you even know how to name them. They rise like weather, a sudden warmth in your chest, a storm behind your eyes, a trembling in your hands. You do not understand, but your brain listens. Slowly, it learns. In the earliest years of your life, your brain is shaped by more than touch and sound. It is sculpted day by day by your emotional climate, the way someone holds you when you cry, the smile that meets you when you wake, the tension in a room before words are even spoken. Your neurons respond to these things. They light up, reach out, grow toward what is felt. This is not metaphor. It is biology. Emotion activates your limbic system, a deep set of brain structures that include the amygdala, the hippocampus, and parts of the prefrontal cortex. These regions form a kind of inner compass, guiding how you respond, remember, can adapt. And in children, this compass is still calibrating. The amygdala, which detects threat and triggers fear, is highly active in childhood. It scans constantly for danger real or imagined and sounds the alarm. But the prefrontal cortex, it's a part of the brain that helps calm that alarm, develops more slowly. So, for a child, emotions arrive big and unfiltered. The sadness is overwhelming. The joy is total. Fear is all consuming. And yet, each feeling leaves a trace. Each one becomes a thread in the neural tapestry. Consider how memory works. You're more likely to remember something if it made you feel a birthday with laughter, a fall on the pavement, a hug after a storm. Emotion etches memory deeper. It tags an event as meaningful, telling the brain, this matters, keep it in childhood. This means that feelings don't just follow events, they help record them. If you learned a lesson while scared, that lesson stays. If you felt safe while learning, your brain associates knowledge with comfort. This is why classrooms with warmth and kindness often produce more resilient learners, because when a child feels emotionally secure, the brain opens. When a child feels afraid or ashamed, it closes. In early development, emotions are the language of the brain. They speak in the absence of words. When you were a baby, you couldn't say, I'm hungry, but your distress told the world. You couldn't explain, I feel safe, but your relaxed breathing, your steady gaze, communicated peace. Caregivers who responded consistently helped wire your brain for trust. Those who didn't due to stress, trauma, absence, or harm left different marks, not permanent ones, but deep ones. Attachment theory tells us that early emotional bonds set the tone for how we relate to others later in life. A securely attached child was soothed when distressed, learns that emotions can be shared, managed, softened, and insecurely. Attached child may grow to doubt emotional safety, to avoid vulnerability, or to cling too tightly. And again, this isn't just psychological. It's neural. It's the wiring beneath the feeling. Even play is emotional learning. When a child pretends to be sad, then bursts into giggles, they are testing emotional boundaries. When they comfort a stuffed animal, they are practicing empathy. Mirror neurons activate, helping them imagine what another feels. These neural reflections become emotional reflexes. In time, they become compassion. But not all emotional sculpting is gentle. Chronic stress in childhood, especially without the buffer of a caring adult, can flood the brain with cortisol and adrenaline. In small doses, these chemicals help you survive. They prepare the body to respond to threat, fight, flee, freeze. But in large, repeated doses, they change the architecture of the brain. The amygdala grows more reactive. Campus, which stores memory, may shrink. The prefrontal cortex struggles to focus, regulate, plan. A child raised in fear learns to scan constantly for danger, even when none is there. This is not a flaw, it's adaptation, but it comes at a cost. And yet, the brain remains plastic. Emotions continue to teach. A child who finds safety later in life through a kind teacher, steady friend, a loving partner, can reshape their inner map. Neurons reconnect. Patterns soften. The brain learns that not all touch harms, that not all silence is abandonment. Healing becomes its own form of learning. Sometimes, people think of emotion as the opposite of reason, as if to be rational is to be untouched by feeling. But neuroscience tells a different story. Patients with damage to emotional centers of the brain can still think logically, but they cannot make decisions. They become stuck, unable to weigh value, risk, desire. Emotion provides the color to thought, the push behind choice. Without it, reason becomes empty. In education, this matters deeply. When a child feels emotionally supported, they learn more easily. They take risks. They ask questions. They tolerate mistakes. But when a child feels shamed, anxious, or ignored, the brain diverts its energy to protection, not exploration. It closes its doors. This is why relationships matter. Not just at home, but in schools, clinics, playgrounds. Every smile, every word, every calm hand placed on a small shoulder is a lesson in emotional safety. And emotional safety is what makes intellectual growth possible. You still carry these early lessons: the feeling of being seen, the fear of being wrong, the warmth of being understood. They echo in your present as preferences, anxieties, strengths. You might not remember the moment they began, but your neurons do. They carry a residue, a pattern of activity, a bias toward comfort or caution. In this way, your emotional history lives in your circuitry, and yet you are not bound by it, because every new emotional experience adds a new stroke to the canvas. You can still be rewired by kindness, still changed by love, still softened by awe. Even now, when you pause to breathe deeply, to feel without judgment, your brain responds. It quiets the alarm bells. It opens new paths. This is what mindfulness does. Not magic, but biology. It invites the emotion of presence, which tells the brain, this moment is safe. This moment matters. And, with enough practice, even a weary brain begins to believe it. So, as you drift, imagine the emotional rivers that have carved canyons in your mind, some deep and painful, some gentle and green. They are all part of your map. But the map is not fixed. It updates every day with every feeling that flows through you. Tomorrow, a new kindness may change the course of a stream. A new insight may soften a hardened path, because your brain listens not just to thought, but to feeling, and what it hears, it becomes. And just beyond emotions, edge lies the next sculptor of thought, the gentle rhythms of language, and how words begin to shape the way we see. Language enters quietly. It doesn't arrive all at once. It grows like roots beneath your awareness. one syllable, then another, until your mind becomes a garden of names. Mama, milk, no. Again, tiny sounds that open vast worlds. Not because they are perfect, but because they connect. Language is not just a tool for speaking, it's a framework for perception. It teaches you not just how to communicate, but how to notice. In the earliest months of your life, you hear language long before you understand it. You soak it in through lullabies, gentle murmurs, even the rhythm of footsteps in conversation. And slowly, your brain begins to organize these sounds, recognizing patterns, cadences. The left hemisphere, especially in areas like Broca's and Wernicke's, begins to light up with meaning. Neural pathways strengthen with each repetition. Words become more than sound. They become symbols. But it's not just the brain learning language. Language, in turn, reshapes the brain. As you acquire words, your thoughts begin to take structure. You move from sensation to articulation. A need becomes a sentence. A feeling becomes a phrase. I'm hungry. I'm scared. I want more. Suddenly, the world is no longer just felt. It's narrated. Memory itself becomes more durable. With language, before words, you remember through impression. A warm blanket, bright light, a sudden, loud noise. But with words, you begin to label and categorize. This is the red ball I like. That was the loud truck that scared me. These labels help your brain sort, store, and recall. They create connections between past and present, between what happened and how you understand it. Language, then, is memory's first scaffolding. It also changes how you see others. Once you learn names, you begin to identify not just objects, but emotions in others. You hear sad, and you notice a frown. You hear angry, you connect it with tension in a voice. This gives you the first bricks of empathy, understanding that others feel what you feel, even when you can't see inside them. Language is your mirror and your bridge, and as words accumulate, your sense of time begins to shift. You learn past and future. Yesterday, we went to the park. Tomorrow, we'll bake cookies. These concepts stretch your brain beyond the present moment. You start to imagine, plan, anticipate. You create stories not just of now, but of what has been and what could be. Cognitive psychologists often say that language gives rise to autobiographical memory, the idea of a self that continues through time. Before language, you are present. After language, you are a story. Even your emotions become more nuanced. A baby feels distress. A toddler learns the word frustrated. With that word comes control, a shape to the chaos. Labeling emotions activates the prefrontal cortex, helping to regulate them. This is why teaching children to name their feelings is an act of empowerment, not indulgence. Words help soothe the storms inside, but words do more than name the world. They also filter it. Language determines what you can describe, and thus what you can focus on. In some indigenous languages, there are dozens of words for snow, each describing a different kind of cold or texture. In others, there are no words for left and right, only cardinal directions: north, south, east, west. Children raised with these languages develop spatial awareness in extraordinary ways. The language you grew up with becomes the lens through which you interpret your surroundings. It doesn't just shape what you say, it shapes what you notice. Language also reveals the brain's exquisite timing. Each syllable, each pause, requires coordination across regions. Auditory processing, motor planning, memory retrieval. This is why children often stumble through speech at first, not because they lack thought, but because the machinery is still syncing. And as they master it, speech becomes more fluid, and so does their thinking. Thought and language feed one another. They evolve together. But what happens when language is delayed, or when it develops in unique ways? In children with conditions like autism, Language might emerge differently with echolalia, scripting, or alternate rhythms. This doesn't mean the absence of thought. It means a different kind of internal symphony. And in bilingual children, you see something remarkable. Not confusion, but flexibility. They switch between languages, learning that there are many ways to frame the same idea. This mental code switching strengthens executive function, the brain's ability to plan, inhibit, and adapt. Multilingualism doesn't slow children, it expands them. As your vocabulary grows, so does your sense of self. Children often speak aloud while playing, narrating their actions, giving voice to their inner world. Psychologists call this private speech. It is the precursor to internal dialogue, that steady, silent narration you carry even now. This voice helps you make choices, evaluate actions, soothe anxiety. It is a quiet companion, built word by word in childhood. Language also shapes morality. When a child hears stories, not lectures, but narratives, they begin to understand right and wrong, cause and consequence. Fables, myths, and bedtime tales are not just entertainment. They are tools of neural and moral development. They give abstract concepts, a body, a voice, a face. The boy who cried wolf, the girl who outsmarted the fox, is the kindness that grew into a tree. Through stories, language teaches empathy in the classroom. Language continues to be the gatekeeper of learning. Reading fluency predicts academic success. It's not just decoding letters, it's comprehension, inference, retention. Children who can discuss what they read tend to think more critically. This is why reading aloud, dialogue, and conversation are not extra activities. They are foundational. They train the mind not just to speak, but to reflect. But language is also delicate. Children exposed to stress, neglect, or violence often show reduced vocabulary, not because they're less intelligent, but because their brain is focused on survival. Their inner narrative gets drowned by external noise. Intervention matters. The brain remains plastic, but the earlier the nurturing, the stronger the roots. And now, as you lie still, you may hear that inner voice narrating gently, rhythmically. It may be echoing the language of your earliest days, comforting tones, soft words, the syntax of safety. This voice is your mind's script, a quiet pattern woven from years of listening, speaking, reading, and wondering. And as your thoughts drift, notice how even your dreams begin to speak in words. You wake in one language and dream in another, and somewhere in between. You think the multilingual mind isn't just a mind with more words. It's a mind trained to shift, to bend, to hold multiple truths in soft, open hands. To speak more than one language is to live with several mirrors, each one reflecting the world at a slightly different angle. And in childhood, when the brain is still wet clay, these mirrors are not jarring or strange. They are natural, comfortable, like shoes worn equally on both feet. When a baby hears two languages, the brain does not get confused. It listens. Studies with tiny infants, just weeks old, show that the brain can already distinguish between language rhythms. French, for instance, flows like a song. English, like pulses. Mandarin, like tones that rise and fall, even before meaning. There is music, and the bilingual brain learns to dance between those beats as the child grows. Vocabularies. The mind develops paralleles to grammars, to systems of rules. They may mix them at first, a word from one language mid-sentence in another. But this isn't confusion. It's code switching, a natural, flexible adaptation. Signal that the mind knows both systems well enough to blend them. Eventually, as fluency deepens, the brain becomes capable of keeping them separate when needed, and overlapping them when useful. This duality, this mental stretching, builds a brain that is agile and resilient. Imagine walking into a room and choosing how to perceive it. In English, it's a glass of water. Spanish, it's un vaso de agua. In Japanese, mizu no kapu. Each structure, each flow, shapes how you organize the world. In some languages, objects have gender, tables are feminine, keys are masculine. In others, time flows horizontally past behind, future ahead. But in some, time is vertical future, is down, past is up. These are not just quirks of vocabulary, they are quiet instructions to the brain. They whisper, this is how you categorize your experience. And for children raised multilingual, these instructions come from many sources. The result is not noise, but richness, neurologically. Bilingualism strengthens what scientists call executive function. That's the set of skills responsible for focusing attention, ignoring distractions, holding two thoughts at once, switching tasks smoothly, because bilingual children must constantly choose which language to use and suppress the other. They practice these skills every day. This isn't forced. It's automatic. It happens quietly as they decide, should I speak to grandma in Urdu or in English? Should I use Spanish at school or home? Every choice is a small mental stretch, and over time, these stretches build mental flexibility. Just like a dancer grows graceful through repetition, so does the bilingual brain become nimble through choice. There's also a beauty in how bilingual children handle ambiguity. Monolingual children often search for the right word, but multilingual ones know that there can be more than one name for the same thing, that meanings can overlap, that nuance lives in between languages. This makes them more tolerant of uncertainty, a powerful trait for learning. Empathy and creativity. They also tend to be better at perspective taking, not just because they've learned different words, but because they've practiced shifting lenses. Language is not just a set of terms, it's a culture, a way of relating to the world. To speak Korean is to understand hierarchy. To speak Arabic is to feel rhythm. To speak Hindi is to dance with metaphors. Each tongue teaches a new posture of the mind. Memory behaves differently in bilingual minds. Experiments show that people often recall memories more vividly when prompted, in the same language they used during the original experience. That means a bilingual child may remember a moment with grandpa more clearly when speaking his language. Their brain files the memory not just by sight or feeling, but by linguistic context. It's as if each language holds its own set of keys to a particular emotional library. This adds depth. A multilingual memory is layered, rich, dimensional, and then there's identity too. Speak multiple languages is to live with more than one voice inside. Children often describe themselves differently in different languages. In one tongue, they may feel more formal, in another, more playful. One may be linked with family, another with school or friendship. This isn't fragmentation. It's fluency of self. It allows a child to navigate multiple social worlds with authenticity. They learn early that who you are can flex gently with where you are, still remain whole. Of course, the multilingual path isn't always smooth. Children may feel caught between cultures, between expectations. One language may feel like home, the other like duty. Or one may be celebrated while the other is ignored. Parents may worry about delays, though research shows that any early lags are usually brief and disappear. What matters most is support, exposure, affection linked with language. When words are offered with love, they grow roots. In the brain, bilingualism looks like denser gray matter in areas related to language and control. MRI scans show more activity in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, an area tied to focus and decision-making, even into old age. Bilingual brains show greater cognitive reserve, a kind of mental resilience that delays the onset of dementia symptoms by years. So the effects are not just present in childhood, they echo across a lifetime. A child given 2 languages is not just being taught to speak. They're being equipped to adapt, to empathize, to remember with nuance, to resist decline, and the way those languages are learned matters. If both tongues are heard from birth, the child develops them naturally as two native languages. If one comes later, the brain adapts again, recruiting more conscious processes, building bridges where once there were highways. Either way, the plastic brain responds, stretches, weaves, adjusts. Neuroplasticity doesn't vanish after infancy. It bends with need, with practice, with time, at night, when the world is quiet. A multilingual child may dream in many voices, or just one, or a mix that makes perfect sense only to them. They may wake with a word from a language they haven't spoken in weeks, a reminder that nothing inside is ever lost, only resting. Language lives in layers, sometimes dormant, sometimes dominant, but always there. And now, you lie here. Perhaps you recall a phrase from your childhood, a lullaby in a grandparent's tongue, a phrase whispered at bedtime. Even if you no longer speak that language, it lives somewhere in you. It's shaped your comfort, your early thoughts, your way of naming the world. That's the miracle of the multilingual mind. It holds not just knowledge, but emotional truth. Your brain does not begin with thought. It begins with feeling. Long before you form a memory, you feel the cool air on your skin, the pressure of a heartbeat against your ear, the rhythmic rise and fall of being carried. Before you name a thing, you grasp it. Before you know what a hand is, you feel it close around something warm. The earliest knowledge you have of your world enters through the body, through touch, pressure, balance, rhythm, and motion. This is not secondary to thought. It's thought in its earliest, rawest form. As a newborn, your arms flail, your legs curl, your fists clench. It's not aimless. Each gesture is the brain sending out signals, trying to locate the edges of the body, trying to understand, where do I end? Where does the world begin? Tis is proprioception, your brain's internal map of your body in space. It's not something you see, something you know without thinking. It's how you close your eyes and still touch your nose. It's how you walk without staring at your feet. And in childhood, this sense is blooming, building a map of the self that gets richer with every fall, crawl, roll, and reach. The skin is the brain's largest sensory organ. It listens to the world moment by moment, not in words, but in pressure, temperature, texture. When a parent strokes a baby's back, the nerves respond with tiny electrical sparks. It's traveling to the brainstem, to the limbic system, to the cortex. The result is not just pleasure, okay? It is organization, safety, pattern recognition. Touch lays the groundwork for emotional regulation, for memory, for language, for empathy. In fact, studies show that infants who receive more touch develop faster cognitive skills, not just physically, but emotionally and socially. Touch isn't just comforting, it is wiring. Now imagine movement. A toddler stands, wobbles, falls, okay? Each motion is feedback. Each stumble teaches balance, core strength, spatial memory. The cerebellum at the base of the brain lights up with activity during motion. It doesn't just coordinate movement, it also plays a role in attention, language processing, okay? And even emotional regulation. That's why movement and learning are so deeply linked. When a child runs, skips, spins, they're not wasting time. They're sharpening the mind. Sensory integration begins early. The brain doesn't process each sense in isolation. It weaves them. A touch is paired with a sound, okay? A motion is paired with a visual cue. A baby sees the rattle, hears the rattle, grasps the rattle. And with each layer, the brain synchronizes systems, visual, auditory, motor, tactile. This integration is foundational. Children who struggle with sensory processing may find the world overwhelming, too loud, too bright, too sudden. They might crave pressure or avoid touch. They might spin, flap, jump, not out of restlessness, as a way to anchor the self in space. Understanding this helps us support neurodiverse children. Not all minds process sensory input the same way, but all are mapping, feeling, learning. Now, let's go deeper into one specific system. The vestibular system. It lives in the inner ear, okay? It helps you know which way is up. It's responsible for balance. It's for motion, for the sense of being still or moving. When a child spins on a merry-go-round, they're activating this system, strengthening balance, coordination, and calm. Swinging, rocking, jumping. These aren't just play. They are therapy for the growing brain. Children often self-regulate through movement. They seek it because their brain needs it. In preschool classrooms, you'll often see sensory corners, weighted blankets, fidget tools, tactile boards. These aren't distractions, okay? For some children, calm comes through sensation. Even chewing, clapping, hugging a stuffed toy can reset the nervous system. The body is the gatekeeper of emotion, okay? And touch is one of its most fluent languages. Let's pause and think of the hands. Each finger has thousands of receptors, each one sending signals to a special part of the brain called the somatosensory cortex. This region holds a map of your body with large areas devoted to the lips, hands, and face. That's why babies put everything in their mouths. Okay. The lips are a major input center. Exploring with the mouth is exploring with the mind. Later, when a child builds blocks, colors with crayons, laces shoes, they are fine-tuning this map. They are strengthening coordination, but also attention, memory. In language, Montessori schools emphasize hands-on learning because they understand this principle. The hand is a gateway to the mind. When a child touches textured letters, sorts beads by size, prepares food with careful fingers, they aren't just gaining skills. They are refining cognition. And not just in early childhood, even adults benefit from tactile learning. Writing by hand strengthens memory. Gardening calms the mind. Kneading dough slows the breath. To touch is to know in a way that sight alone cannot offer. Let's not forget the feet. Barefoot, play on grass, sand, carpet, stimulates nerves that help develop balance and awareness. Shoes are useful, but now and then, children need to feel the ground, to run without rubber, to climb without control, to fall and get up. Risk builds resilience, and movement teaches boundaries. The body learns. Here is where I am. Here is how I move through the world. Touch also links directly to emotional bonding. Oxytocin, the cuddle hormone, is released through gentle skin contact. This hormone promotes trust, reduces anxiety, fosters connection. Children, held, often gently rocked, cradled, cuddled, tend to have stronger attachments and more secure nervous systems. This isn't sentiment, it's biology. In orphanages, where touch was scarce, children often show developmental delays. Even when fed, clothed, and medically treated, they needed touch to thrive. A single stroke across the back, a hand on the cheek, can alter cortisol levels, can calm the storm inside. In therapy, touch and movement are used to help children regulate emotion. Occupational therapists use brushing techniques, deep pressure, joint compression. These aren't harsh. They're grounding. They tell the body, you are here, you are safe. You can return to stillness. Now close your eyes. Imagine a childhood moment of movement, spinning with arms out wide, leaping from rock to rock, rolling down a grassy hill, dancing barefoot in the kitchen. You weren't just playing. You were mapping, were memorizing the shape of joy, and your brain was writing it down. Not in words, but in neurons. Those patterns may still live in your body, in the way you sway when music plays, in how you calm yourself by pacing, the comfort you feel when someone rubs your back. Movement is memory, okay? Memory is movement. You sit quietly, perhaps on a parent's lap. The lights are low. Outside, the night leans gently against the window pane. Inside, a voice begins, once upon a time. You don't understand every word, but already something in you leans forward. A rhythm settles into your chest. A calm hush blankets the room. Before you can define what a story is, you know how it feels. That is the mystery of storytelling. It speaks not first to the intellect, but to the nervous system, to breath, to pulse, to something older than thought. The first stories you ever hear are not read from books. They're the tone in someone's voice when they greet you, rise and fall of lullabies, the rhythms of daily life. First we wake, then we eat, then we nap. Story is structure, and the young brain seeks structure like roots seek soil. A story gives shape to experience. It makes sense of chaos. It whispers, this is how time flows. This is what matters, okay? This is who you are. Even before you can speak, you are absorbing patterns, the arc of cause and effect, the dance of question and answer, the beat of repetition and return. Stories work because the brain is built for sequence. There is a reason children ask to hear the same tale again and again. A tree telling deepens the neural groove. Each ending brings closure, and closure brings calm in the brain. This process links to the hippocampus, a seahorse-shaped structure that helps lay down memory. The hippocampus doesn't just record events, it arranges them. It finds beginnings, middles, and ends, and in doing so, it turns raw experience into something meaningful. For children, this is vital. They don't just remember what happened, they remember how it was told. A scraped knee is painful, but becomes a badge of bravery when woven into a story of falling, crying, and getting up again. Consider the bedtime story. It is a ritual, a shared narrative moment, a gentle closure. To the day, the lights dim, the voice softens. The child knows this is the place where the day is made safe again. Monsters are defeated. Wishes are granted. The hero comes home, even when the story is fantastical. The brain treats it as real because emotionally it is. Cognitive psychologists have shown that narrative memory is stronger than factual recall. Tell a child a list of facts they forget. Tell them a story and they remember. Not because they're trying, but because the brain craves meaning. And story provides it. Neuroimaging. Studies show that when you hear a story, your brain activates not just language centers, but sensory areas, emotion circuits, even motor pathways. When the character runs, your motor cortex lights up. When they taste honey, your taste center engages. It's called neurocoupling. Your brain mirrors the tale. You don't just hear the story, you live it. Children especially are tuned to this kind of learning. A story about kindness plants a seed. A story about fear helps them name shadows. A story about loss creates space for grief. These aren't moral lessons imposed from outside. They are emotional rehearsals, safe simulations, ways to practice life before living it. Now, think of folk tales, the stories passed down across generations in every culture, every language, every family. They hold echoes of survival, humor, justice. Caution: the brain holds on to these tales not just for entertainment, but as a guide. Little Red Riding Hood is not just a fable. It's a map of trust and danger. Jack and the Beanstalk is not just magic. It's risk, reward, and consequence. Even nonsensical rhymes have purpose. They develop phonemic awareness. They strengthen memory through rhythm. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. You remember it still. A story also helps children understand emotion. A character is sad, and the child learns what sadness looks like. A character is scared, and the child feels fear without risk. Through story, emotions become safe, nameable, organized, and in time. This builds empathy to feel what someone else feels. Even a fictional someone is to grow the circuits of compassion. This is why early childhood educators emphasize storytelling. It teaches listening. It builds vocabulary. It boosts attention span. But more deeply, it creates shared experience. In a circle of children hearing the same story, something synchronizes. Breaths aligned. Eyes widen together. Laughter bubbles up in harmony. It's social. Clue. And brains are social. Parents tell stories of their own childhoods. Grandparents pass down tales of long ago. And children learn not just information, but identity. We are the kind of people who, these words shape memory. They build legacy. They root a child in a lineage of thought and feeling. You don't remember every moment from your early years, but you remember the stories told about you, how you danced in the living room, how you asked curious questions, how you once made everyone laugh at dinner. These become your stories, and in them, your sense of self is born. Now, imagine a child who never hears stories, whose world is noise or silence, but not narrative. Their experiences may remain scattered, unlinked, unanchored. Without narrative, memory becomes fragmented. And a fragmented memory can feel like a fragmented self. That's why storytelling is not a luxury. It's a form of neural integration. It ties together time. It gives emotion a path. It tells the brain, here is how things unfold. Here is what makes sense. As children grow, they begin to tell their own stories. First with gestures, then with drawings, then with words. These early tales may be simple. I went to the park. I saw a duck. I ran. Cool. But inside them are the first seeds of reflection, beginnings of inner narration. This is how a person becomes aware of their own life. It's through the quiet, slow building of autobiography. And it doesn't stop in childhood. Even as adults, we continue this work. We revise our personal stories. We reframe memories. We retell our past to understand our present. This is why therapy often feels like storytelling, because healing involves narration to say, this is what happened. This is what I felt. This is who I am now. In the brain, ever plastic listens and changes. So if you were ever unsure how to help a child grow, tell them a story. Tell them one where they are brave, or clever, or simply deeply loved. Let them see themselves in heroes, in animals, explorers, and their brain will carry that pattern forward. A belief, not just in fairy tales, but in themselves. And so, as we leave this chapter, we hold one final thread. That memory begins not in cold data, but in warm narrative. That the first architecture of thought is shaped like a story. Before you ever speak a sentence, you respond to music. A mother hums, and your breath steadies. A nursery rhyme plays, and your fingers tap. Not in mimicry, but in resonance. Long before logic arrives, your brain knows rhythm. Music is the language. Beneath language, a shape of time, a color of sound, a pattern the body recognizes without needing to be taught. In fact, music may be the first structure the mind understands. Watch a child sway when a lullaby plays. There's no instruction, no lesson, just instinct. The brain synchronizes to beat. The heart follows. Even breath aligns. In this soft alignment, neural networks strengthen across the auditory cortex, motor system, and emotional centers. Symphony of activity unfolds. Music is not passive entertainment. It is structural rehearsal. Scientists studying infant brains have found something remarkable. When babies hear rhythm, their brains predict what comes next. Tiny pulses of electricity light up, not just at each note, but just before. This is predictive coding, a kind of early learning. The brain isn't just hearing, it's guessing. And when the guess is right, the reward system glows. Dopamine, delight, and learning, wrapped in joy. Repetition, especially in song, becomes a neural drumbeat. That's why the alphabet is easier sung than said. Why numbers stick better in rhyme? Why we remember childhood jingles decades later. Because rhythm organizes memory. It slices time into usable segments. It gives each moment a place to sit. And it marks transitions, just as a pause in music can signal a change in mood. Let's go deeper. When a child learns to clap to a beat, something profound happens. The brain coordinates auditory input with motor output. This is called sensory motor integration. A child doesn't just hear the rhythm, they become it. And that ability helps form other skills. Walking in time, speaking fluently, reading with flow. Yes, even literacy is built partly on rhythm. Reading, after all, is the parsing of syllables over time. Fluency is tempo. Punctuation is musical pause. Now, imagine a group of children singing together. Their bodies sway in unison. Voices blend. Smiles ripple without anyone instructing it. This is entrainment. It's the brain's natural impulse to sync with others. Entrainment is empathy's cousin. It draws us into shared experience. And in childhood, shared rhythm becomes shared identity. We sang the same song, knew the same beat. We were, for a moment, part of the same breath. Music also teaches discipline, but in a gentle cloak. Learning to play an instrument requires repetition, attention, timing. It grows executive function, the set of mental skills tied to focus, flexibility, and planning. A child who practices scales is exercising patience. A child who improvises is practicing creativity within structure. This is the paradox of music. It's freedom within form, and the brain thrives on that. Even the emotional impact of music is neurologically traceable. Minor keys slow the heartbeat. Major chords lift mood. The amygdala, which processes emotion, responds more strongly to music than to spoken words. A sad song can bring tears without any story. Just tone, just contour. Plot a arc that mirrors our own internal weather. For children with speech delays or emotional challenges, music therapy becomes a bridge. Words may feel inaccessible, but a drum beat is graspable. A humming note is safe. A shared song opens a door. In neurological terms, music recruits alternative pathways. It bypasses broken circuits and forges new ones. A stutter may vanish in song. Frozen emotion may thaw. In this way, music is medicine. And sleep, music whispers, even here. Lullabies don't just soothe. They entrain circadian rhythm. They signal to the brain, it is safe now. It is time to rest. Familiar songs calm the hypothalamus, quiet the autonomic nervous system, and nudge the body toward stillness, even in sleep. Music echoes show that children who listen to music at bedtime experience more consistent sleep cycles. Their dreams settle deeper. Their bodies learn rest through sound across cultures. Music is embedded in rites of passage. Births are sung. Names are chanted. Celebrations are danced. Music binds memory to moment. Ask any adult to recall a childhood event, and often song comes with it, because music, like scent, roots itself deep in the brain. The hippocampus stores it. The auditory cortex replays it. The prefrontal cortex finds meaning in it. A song can be a time machine. Even in old age, when memory phrase, music, remains in Alzheimer's patients. Familiar tunes awaken recognition. Frozen faces brighten. Silent lips sing, because the brain remembers what was sung long after it forgets what was said. This tells us something vital, that music is not decoration. It is structure. It is scaffolding for memory. It is a rhythm the brain holds even when other rhythms fade. In early childhood, the brain's plasticity is highest, and music weaves itself into that soft clay. A child who sings, dances, or listens with delight is building neural connections far beyond what we can see. They are learning timing, prediction, emotion, imagination, and even silence. The rests between the notes teach patience and anticipation. Music is made of absence as much as sound, and the brain learns to listen for both. So, if you want to nurture a child's mind, don't just speak to them. Sing, make up silly songs for brushing teeth, create rhythms for footsteps, turn routines into refrains. Let music be not separate from life, but woven into it. Because when melody and movement meet repetition and joy, the brain blooms quietly, beautifully, and the learning lasts. As this chapter closes, you might imagine the faint echo of a lullaby, long forgotten. It still lives inside your nervous system, its rise and fall, part of who you became. And now we turn from melody to memory's silent sculptor, the mind at rest, the slow breath of sleep, where learning settles deeper and rewires in the quiet hours when the world goes still. You drift into sleep like slipping into water. Your body softens, your breath slows, the world recedes, but your mind does not stop. Even in the stillness of night, your brain is awake in its own way. It's not conscious, not thinking, but working, tending to memories like a quiet gardener under moonlight. This is not a metaphor. This is real. Sleep is one of the most active times for learning, especially in children, especially in you. Throughout the day, your mind collects every new experience. A sound, a face, a word leaves a faint trace, but those traces are not yet permanent. They flicker, they waver. They're stored like notes scribbled in the margins. It's only during sleep that your brain begins to rewrite those notes into its main pages. This is memory consolidation. It is slow, it is beautiful, and it is essential. Imagine the hippocampus, a small seahorse-shaped region deep inside your brain, as a temporary notebook. All day long, it gathers events. It tries to hold everything: the color of the sky, the tone in a teacher's voice, the feel of a crayon between your fingers. But the hippocampus can only carry so much. It fills quickly, so at night, while your eyes close, your brain begins to sort. Important memories are replayed, strengthened, sent to the neocortex for long-term storage. The rest, they fade like dreams before morning. Scientists have watched this happen in sleeping mice. They've observed specific neurons fire in the same patterns they used while learning a maze earlier that day. The brain rehearses quietly, efficiently, as if it's whispering to itself. This matters. Keep this, let the rest go. Your brain is curating your life while you sleep, but not all sleep is equal. In childhood, you experience more deep sleep than adults. This is called slow-wave sleep. It's the heaviest kind, the kind where your body barely moves, but your brain pulses in long, deep rhythms, like waves rolling onto a quiet beach. During this phase, growth hormone is released, tissue is repaired, immune cells strengthen, and in the brain, synapses, the connections between neurons, are gently rebalanced. Some are trimmed, some are strengthened, some are quietly rewired. This is neuroplasticity in motion. This is sleep as sculptor. Dreams are part of this, too. In REM sleep, when your eyes flicker behind closed lids, your brain becomes almost as active as when you're awake, and yet you are still. This paradox is when dreams unfold. They may seem strange, disconnected, but dreams are a kind of narrative glue. They help your brain weave emotions into memory. They test possibilities, rehearse scenarios, try on new understandings. A child who dreams of flying is not just fantasizing. Their brain may be integrating freedom, fear, or curiosity into their emotional landscape. Some researchers believe that dreaming may be your brain's way of updating its inner model of the world. Each day, you experience things that challenge what you previously believed. Sleep gives your mind a chance to adjust the model, gently, without overwhelm, like a tide smoothing a sandcastle, then reshaping it again by dawn. This is why disrupted sleep can feel so disorienting. If the nightly rewiring is interrupted, wake with mental static. Memories blur. Emotions feel raw. Learning becomes harder the next day, for children especially. Consistent sleep is not just rest, it's cognitive nourishment. Even napping plays a role in early childhood. Naps are not just helpful, they're essential. A 90-minute nap has been shown to double retention of new vocabulary in toddlers. Naps serve as miniature consolidation windows. They give the brain more chances to sort, file, and remember. It's like taking a breath between the rush of experience. The architecture of sleep is elegant. You pass through cycles: light sleep, deep sleep, REM, in repeating waves. Each cycle lasts about 90 minutes. Each one plays a different role. Deep sleep clears metabolic waste from the brain. It scrubs. It heals. REM connects ideas that weren't linked before. It dissociates. It expands like chapters in a book. Each sleep phase adds something new to your understanding, even more astonishing. While you sleep, the brain doesn't just store information, it forgets deliberately. This is called synaptic DOWNSCALING. It sounds harsh, but it's a gift. If your brain remembered everything, it would drown in detail. Sleep helps you retain what's relevant and gently let go of what is not. This process clears space for new learning tomorrow. You don't need to remember everything. You only need to remember what helps you grow. And this is why bedtime rituals matter. A soft routine, a lullaby, a story, quiet room signals the brain to begin its transformation. It tells the body it's time to hand over the reins. You don't have to understand this. Your biology already does. Melatonin begins to rise. Heart rate slows. The parasympathetic nervous system comes to life. Rest becomes this biological invitation, and the brain accepts. Even the smallest bedtime cues become anchors. A favorite blanket, a dim light, the scent of lavender, the hum of white noise. All of it weaves into memory. All of it tells the brain, now is the time to reorganize. These cues matter because the child's brain is listening even when the ears are still. And while all this happens, learning doesn't stop. It deepens. The science of offline learning shows that after sleep, children don't just remember what they learned earlier. They understand it better. They grasp patterns. They infer rules. They solve problems that stumped them the day before. This is not because they worked harder. It's because their brains did the quiet work while they slept. So, what does this mean for you? It means your brain is not a container, but a living process. It doesn't simply record. It refines. It doesn't need you to be awake to learn. It needs you to trust the silence. In this way, every night becomes a classroom. Every dream, a page in the story of your becoming. And as you exhale into sleep tonight, remember, your brain continues even now. It will choose what to keep, what to let go, what to strengthen, and when you wake, you will be a little different, slightly more you, because of the sculpting done in the quiet. And from that silence, new questions begin to stir. Questions about safety, about stress, about how love or fear shape the very circuits we carry into waking dot. Let us step softly, then into the brain's oldest need, the longing to feel safe enough to grow, to grow. You were born into a world that holds you, or it doesn't. And from those first days, before language, before memory, your brain listens carefully for one thing. Am I safe? The answer doesn't come in words. It comes in touch, in tone, in warmth, in how gently the world responds when you cry. And it is this felt sense of safety that builds the scaffolding of the growing brain. The infant's brain is soft, not just metaphorically. Literally, neurons are growing, reaching, touching, forming connections at breathtaking speed, millions per second. But this growth is not random. It is directed by experience, and the most powerful experience for a baby's developing brain is relationship. Human connection is not extra. It is the blueprint. When a caregiver responds to hunger, to fear, K, to delight, the brain receives a message. The world is predictable. K matter. I can trust. These messages do not come in sentences. They arrive through the body and eye contact, in cooing voices, in the rhythm of a rocking chair. This is what forms secure attachment, and secure attachment becomes the first, real foundation of all future learning, because when the brain feels safe, it opens. But what if that safety is absent, or unpredictable, or interrupted by trauma? Then the brain adapts, not by blooming, but by armoring. It begins to prepare not for growth, but for survival. Trauma is not just an event. It is the body's lasting response to overwhelm. It is what happens when stress comes too fast, too big, or too often, and the child has no help to process it. The brain, still plastic, still forming, responds the only way it knows. It rewires to expect danger. This is the world of toxic stress. Unlike positive stress, it's like trying to walk for the first time, or tolerable stress, like a short illness with comfort nearby. Toxic stress is different. It lingers, it floods the system, and without buffering care, it alters brain development. The amygdala, that tiny almond of alarm, begins to grow larger, more sensitive. Its job is to detect the threat, but now it rings too often, too loud. The prefrontal cortex, it's your center of reason and self-control, struggles to develop properly. Its job is to pause, to plan, to reflect, but under constant stress, it dims the hippocampus. Your seat of memory shrinks. It has no room to encode joy, only vigilance. The child learns not curiosity, but caution. This rewiring is not a flaw. It is the brain doing its best to survive. A child who flinches, row freezes, row fights when criticized is not misbehaving. They are remembering with their body. Their nervous system has become a map of past alarms, and unless the map is gently redrawn, they will carry it forward into classrooms, into relationships, into adulthood. But the story doesn't end there, because the same plasticity that allowed the brain to wire for fear can over time help it rewire for safety. Neuroplasticity never vanishes. It simply slows, which means healing is always possible. The first step, safety. Not just absence of harm, but the presence of attuned care. A calm voice, a stable routine, predictable reactions, gentle touch. These are not soft things. They are structural. In children recovering from trauma, safe relationships literally rebuild brain circuits. Synapses grow. Stress hormones normalize. Sleep improves. Memory returns. Learning becomes possible again. And this is not just seen in psychology. It's seen in neuroscience. Studies have shown that in children from high adversity backgrounds, interventions that include consistent caregiving play and emotional attunement lead to visible changes in brain scans. Areas once dim light up again. The brain says, "Oh, perhaps the world is not always dangerous. Perhaps I can come out from hiding." Even simple practices like daily storytelling, singing, or gentle massage can help. They don't erase trauma, but they signal something more important. You are safe now. You don't have to be on guard. You can begin to grow again. This is the magic of co-regulation. And adults.com, nervous system becomes a guidepost for the child's stormy one. Over time, with repetition, the child's system learns to settle. Not because it is told to, but because it is shown how and here. A strange paradox emerges. The same brain that was shaped by fear can become, through healing, especially empathic. Because it has known pain, it becomes finely tuned to the emotions of others. Children who heal from trauma often grow into adults who listen deeply, who feel deeply, who care beyond expectation. Pain that is met with love does not vanish. but it transforms. Of course, this is not linear. Healing is not a straight path. It is a spiral. There are regressions, pauses, flares. But each moment of safety offered is a new thread woven into the brain's tapestry. And you, even now, if you carry old patterns of fear, your brain is not frozen. You can still change, still soften, still invite safety into the neural spaces that once knew only defense. Mindfulness, therapy, connection. They don't just change thoughts, okay? They change the shape of synapses. Because ultimately, what we understand now is this. Brains are not shaped by content. They are shaped by context. And the deepest context is not curriculum. It is care. A classroom, home, a world that holds space for emotion, for repair, for tenderness. That's where minds grow best. So, if a child stares out the window, or flinches when touched, or acts wild when they're actually afraid, pause. See the nervous system behind the behavior. Respond not with discipline, but with presence. That moment of being seen, without judgment, is more powerful than 1,000 corrections. It is neuroplasticity, meeting compassion, and it is the beginning of a new brain. As the child settles slowly, quietly, something ancient begins to rise again. Curiosity, not the loud kind, not the driven kind, but the kind that peeks out from behind fear and says, maybe the world is interesting again. And that, more than scores or structure, is the true foundation of lifelong learning. Because a brain that feels safe will take risks, will imagine, will play dot, and in that safety, even the most wounded neural paths can begin to bloom again. In this way, safety is not the absence of danger. It is the presence of possibility. And with enough time, enough repetition, enough quiet holding, the brain, child or adult, begins to believe, maybe I don't have to survive every moment. Maybe I can rest. Maybe I can learn. Maybe I can become. And from there, a new challenge awaits. A world of glowing screens, constant input, and digital rewiring, where safety is not always visible, but attention is always demanded. A world where the plastic mind meets technology. It must adapt once more. You sit beside a child, and before them glows the screen. Bright colors pulse, cartoon voices swirl in rhythm, music, laughter, motion, all compressed into a glowing rectangle. They watch, not with focus, but with absorption. It is not attention, but immersion. And somewhere inside, their brain is changing, because every experience shapes the child's mind, but not all experiences shape it the same. The brain, still plastic, is always listening for patterns, and digital patterns. Fast, loud, addictive, are very different from the slow rhythms of the natural world. A tree sways, a bird lands, a wind brushes the cheek. These movements are irregular, soft, unpredictable, but a screen, it repeats, loops, captures, and this matters. Neuroplasticity is neutral. It doesn't care if an experience is good or bad, only if it is frequent. In digital experiences, scrolling, tapping, flashing, swiping are very frequent. So the brain adapts. It becomes fast, reactive, efficient at switching tasks, but sometimes not at staying with them. The prefrontal cortex, which helps with attention and decision-making, is shaped by how long we hold our focus. But digital inputs pull focus away again and again. Each notification, each alert, fragments attention into tiny pieces, and slowly, a child's brain learns not to linger, but to leap. This is not doom. It is design. Apps, games, videos, they are made to hold attention, but not gently. They use reward cycles, dopamine loops, and unpredictability to keep young minds watching. So the brain does what it always does. It learns the world it's given. Dopaminergic system, responsible for reward and motivation, adapts to fast feedback. In a game, a child wins coins. On a video, laughs, come every few seconds. But in real life, delays, effort, silence. So reality feels dull. The child craves speed and often doesn't know why. The visual system is stimulated intensely. Flashing lights, exaggerated faces, cartoon violence. The auditory system too. High-pitched sounds, rapid dialogue, digital music. These are not necessarily harmful, but they are intense. And the brain, once used to intensity, struggles too. Find joy in subtlety. A walk in nature, a whispered story, a page turning slowly. These feel slow, but slow is where depth lives. And so, attention forms. The brain that grows with screens becomes quick, adaptive, reactive, may struggle with stillness, with patience, with boredom. Yet, boredom is not the enemy. Boredom is the space where imagination blooms. In boredom, the mind begins to wander, to connect old ideas, to daydream. But if every moment is filled, there is no space to create. The default mode network, the brain's reflective state, needs quiet, needs pauses. It's the mode where we process the past, imagine the future, form identity. Children constantly engaged with screens may spend less time here, okay? And so they may become experts in reaction, but novices in reflection. And yet, technology is not the villain. It is a tool. It can teach, it can connect, it can comfort. A child Skyping a parent overseas, a dyslexic child learning through audiobooks, lonely child finding a friend online. These are real gifts. It's not technology itself, but the relationship to it that shapes the brain. When tech is interactive, not passive, when it invites creation, not just consumption, the brain engages differently. Child building a digital story, or coding a robot, or composing a song on a tablet. This activates learning. But when tech is passive, autoplayed videos, endless scrolling, the brain becomes a receiver, not a builder. Plasticity needs friction, something to push against, something to try and fail and try again. Parents, teachers, caregivers, they become the filters, the models. Not by banning screens, but by teaching balance, by asking, what are you watching? Why do you like it? What did it make you feel? These questions turn passive use into active thought. They invite metacognition, thinking about thinking, and that, more than restriction, shapes a resilient mind. It's also vital, shared attention. When a child and adult watch together, talk together, reflect together, screens become windows, not walls. A story on screen becomes a memory. Question becomes a conversation. A moment becomes a connection. This co-viewing transforms the digital space into a relational one. And still, we must be honest, the digital world is designed to pull us in. Even adults struggle to look away, to pause, to choose presence over distraction. So how do we help a child? We model it. When they look up, let them see your eyes, not always your phone. When they speak, pause, listen, because the child's brain is watching yours, and imitation is the deepest teacher. Some families create tech-free zones, dinner tables, bedrooms, nature walks, not as punishment, but as nourishment. These spaces offer contrast. They let the child feel silence, watch clouds drift, hear their own heartbeat. This isn't deprivation, it's restoration. Return to rhythms the brain once knew. And what of sleep? Screens, especially at night, disrupt melatonin, the gentle hormone of dusk. The blue light, the stimulation, the excitement of games, they delay sleep, disturb dreams. Sleep, as we will soon see, is where the day's learning settles, where memory files itself, where emotion is sorted like threads of color. So the child who sleeps poorly may struggle not just with rest, but with regulation. The plastic mind needs rest, tation, and real-world input, touch, movement, face-to-face interaction. Digital learning can't replace these, only complement them. The brain is still a biological organ, shaped by millions of years of evolution. It still longs for rhythm, for nature, for slowness, but it can also adapt. Already, we see digital and native children who code fluently, who switch between languages, who build virtual worlds as easily as treehouses. Their brains are not broken. They are different. The task ahead is not to turn back time, but to teach them how to use the tools they've inherited. With intention, with curiosity, with balance. And so, the plastic mind marches forward, shaped by silicon and sunlight alike. It remains soft, capable, transforming. But transformation needs rest, and in the quiet folds of sleep, a new chapter waits. A chapter where dreams are not escape, but construction. Where every memory, every new lesson, every bright flash of screen or sunlight is sorted and sealed in the library of the self. A chapter where neuroplasticity takes its deepest breath in sleep, in sleep. The world tells you, at some point, that you are grown, finished, formed, that your brain, like clay, hardened in a kiln, has taken its final shape. But your brain disagrees. It hums quietly in the background, soft in places, shifting like dunes. Even as you age, it listens, and when life touches it, through love, loss, wonder, or practice, it changes, not as quickly as before, not as easily. Still, it becomes neuroplasticity, never ends, only slows. In early childhood, your brain is an open meadow. New paths form easily. Neurons connect like vines and bloom. But in adulthood, those paths deepen. Some grow over. Some become roads you walk daily, and others vanish out still. If you walk into a new forest, a new language, a new skill, a new way of thinking, the brain listens, and slowly, tentatively, it lays a new trail. This trail building is not metaphor. It's cellular. Neurons, like old friends, reach toward each other with dendritic arms. They spark, they wire, they make new circuits. Not just when you learn, but when you reflect, reframe, recover. Think of a person who learns to read Braille after losing sight. Their visual cortex doesn't go dark. It adapts. It helps fingers see. Think of someone recovering from a stroke, how their brain reroutes tasks, assigns jobs to new regions, finds detours around the damage. Or the adult who decides to dance, to speak Swahili, to play cello, to forgive. Every act like this rewires you. You are not too old. You are not done. And perhaps this is the most hopeful truth, that your mind isn't only a recorder of past things. It's a painter of possible futures. Plasticity is how we hope, because to change the brain must first imagine another way to be. This power grows quietly in daily rituals. Every time you choose not to react in anger, a new groove forms. Every time you sit with discomfort instead of fleeing it, the brain registers the change. Every time you remember the name of a flower, learn a chord, solve a puzzle, speak kindly when tired, you alter your circuitry. Small acts barely noticed, but real. Even belief plays a role. When people believe, their intelligence is fixed. They avoid challenge. But when they believe they can grow, their brain responds differently. MRI scans show it. Effort changes the brain more when effort is welcomed. Mindset becomes biology, and so does sleep. Every night, while your body rests, your brain sifts the day's experiences. It files, trims. It strengthens what matters. Like a librarian at midnight, It reviews each thought, each emotion, each encounter. Memories move from short-term shelves to long-term archives. Important ones are replayed. Meaningless ones fade. This is consolidation. This is learning without sleep. There is no true growth, and deep sleep offers even more. In the lymphatic system, the brain's cleansing channels widen. Toxins are cleared. Neurochemical balance is restored. This is when your emotional wounds are soothed. This is when trauma may begin to soften. This is when neural scars are reevaluated, not erased, but reframed. Dreams play their part, too. In dreams, the brain practices, it imagines danger, then safety. It rehearses fears in soft focus. Even impossible things have value because the brain learns not just through success, through the simulation of experience. Children dream more than adults. Their dreams are messier, wilder, louder, but you still dream. And in those dreams, plasticity continues its quiet labor. And then there is love. Love. Real love rewires the brain deeply. It strengthens oxytocin networks. It calms fear centers. It increases empathy. Caring for someone, holding, feeding, comforting changes not just them, but you, and being cared for. That too repairs the mind. No therapy, no pill can replace sustained human connection. The brain is social. Loneliness shrinks its richness, but community, even quiet, simple presence, restores its growth. Think of elders who thrive in intergenerational homes. Their memory, their sharpness, their resilience all benefit from one. Being needed, being heard. Isolation stiffens the brain. Touch and talk soften it again, even in old age. Neurons bloom under kindness. And here is another secret of plasticity. Grief can grow you. The loss of someone, the breaking of a dream, the ache of absence. These are not only wounds, they are doorways that the brain doesn't like pain. But when pain comes, it changes to hold it. New paths form, old meanings dissolve, fresh understanding emerges. Grief, when carried gently, can make the brain more compassionate, more curious, more wide. And then there is still joy. Play doesn't end in childhood, it only changes shape. In adults, play is found in music, in laughter, in the rhythm of a shared meal. These things aren't indulgence. Their rehearsal play keeps the mind flexible. It refreshes perspective. It invites novelty without pressure. Your brain, even now, needs play. So what can you do today to continue becoming nothing heroic? Read something new. Ask a better question. Walk a different path. Offer help. Receive it. Sing, sleep, breathe, and forgive yourself for learning slowly. Because slow learning is deep learning. Because each day you become again. Even now, as you rest, your brain is listening, not for facts, but for feeling, for story, for rhythm. And when morning comes, you'll be slightly different than you were tonight. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but meaningfully. You are not a finished being. You are a landscape, quietly shifting. You are not a machine with parts. You are a garden with paths to be cleared and some to be overgrown. You forget what you don't need. You grow what you do. You bend toward light when it comes. This is the promise of the plastic mind. Not that you'll be perfect, but that you are possible. And if the brain never truly finishes, then neither do you. Even now, as the world softens around you, as your breath lengthens, as your thoughts drift toward sleep, something within you keeps listening and becoming. And tomorrow, perhaps, you'll remember one more step toward who you are still becoming, even in sleep. The mind moves, and somewhere in the folds of night, a single neuron lights up, and then another, and then another, like stars beginning to blink in a sky that never really darkens. And maybe that is enough.